everyone throughout the world.
Absolutely.
Ed, always good to have you with us.
Good to see you,
Thank you for your perspective and your report. Jackie?
Good to see you.
Thanks. And joining us now from our D.C. Bureau, Jim Carafano, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He's also Security and Foreign Policy Analyst. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
So this all happened about 5 hours ago when we got word that 3 areas were targeted there in Syria. What do you make of it?
Well, clearly what the administration was trying to do was do a proportional strike to demonstrate that it was linked to a specific behavior, which is this unconstrained use of chemical weapons. They intentionally avoided the Russians. Russia's core interests weren't threatened at all because Russia's just interested in the ports. They're interested in keeping Assad in power, and they've got business dealings with the Alawites, and they don't want that mess with. So the strikes didn't deal with any of that. So the Russians really were happy to kind of, I think, sit on their hands.
Well, all eyes are on Russia right now with what they're going to do. In 2013, Putin promised the world that he would guarantee the elimination of those chemical weapons there in Syria. Clearly, that's not the case. So we're waiting to see what happens in the next coming hours.
Well, yeah. Hey, this is really breaking news here, but Putin lies a lot, and certainly in this case. And I think the reality is. Okay, Obama said we got all the weapons out. We said we blew them up. The reality is with this kind of very primitive chemical infrastructure, we're never going to know if we have 100% of this stuff. But that's not the point. The point is we are in Syria to protect our interests. This unrestrained use of chemical attacks exacerbates the conflicts, makes things worse, and needs to stop. So it doesn't matter if we get 100% of the stuff. What it matters is Assad stays out of our way while we do the things that are important to us.
So Putin lies a lot. Do we need to be worried about any retaliation? Because they said if we did attack, we will have consequences.
Yeah, so the S-400s just kind of stood there and waved as the American cruise missiles went by. Look, Russia has an ally in Syria and Iran, but they have very different interests. Russia's just interested in protecting its equities in Syria. The Syrians want their whole country back. Good for them, but Putin really doesn't care. The Iranians want to be able to strategically threaten Israel. That's good for the Iranians. The Russians really don't care about that. So the Russians are perfectly willing to fight this war to the last Syrian, but they have limited interests, and they're going to protect their interests. And beyond that, I don't think Putin's going to stick his neck out for anybody.
What kind of message, if anything, do you think this sends to North Korea? I mean, he's been flexing his muscle toward North Korea, and we know there's, a potential meeting there. What do you think?
Well, look, I think Syria, North Korea, and Iran are all bundled together, and there's a consistent message there in that the United States is going to protect its interests. And unlike the last administrations, we're not going to cut a deal for the sake of cutting a deal. The president's going to be tough on the Iranians and the Iran deal. He said fix it or nix it. I'm absolutely sure he means it. And he means it not just because about the Iranian threat, is if the North Koreans think they're going to come to the table and cut some kind of, gimme deal, that's just not going to happen. And, I think if he's saying, I'm going to stand up for my interests in Syria, I'm going to push back on Iran. I don't care if my European allies disagree. I don't care if anybody disagrees. I'm going to do what's in the best interest of my country. Then if the North Koreans think they're just going to, get some kind of sweetheart deal, they'll be disappointed.
What do you think is going to stop Assad?
I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. All I care about is America's interests. We don't want the conflict to spin up out of control, which these chemical attacks can contribute to, because we don't want refugee populations pouring into other countries and pouring into Western Europe. We don't want this conflict to spill over and destabilize Iraq or Jordan. That's important to us. We don't want to leave a space for ISIS to come back and have another caliphate. We don't want Israel and Iran to go to war and have that war risk spreading out to the region. As long as we're accomplishing those goals, look, we don't care about Assad. He's a terrible, horrible, terrible genocidal dictator, and we'll never recognize him as a legitimate ruler. And hopefully someday, he will burn in hell or, sit in a court and be hanged somewhere. But quite honestly, making that happen, that's not our problem.
Jim, you're a man that gets straight to the point. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to monitor the situation in Syria tonight. Don't go anywhere.